Is the victory over Villanova a sign for things to come for this UConn squad? Let's find out. You're locked on.
You are Locked On UConn, your daily podcast on the UConn Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On UConn your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Before we dive into today's show, just want to take a moment to say how thankful we are for all of you and appreciate your support. We're proud to say we're the only daily podcast covering the UConn women's and men's basketball, the hoops capital of the world, and we're thrilled to bring you the coverage you deserve. So to show that gratitude, we're giving back. We're donating 10% of our revenue to Husky Ticket Project, helping send kids to UConn games. If you're enjoying the show, take a moment to subscribe, follow, and leave a review wherever you listen. Thanks again for making Locked On UConn your first listen every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Okay, we bring in T. Baker. Tia has been a contributor to The Next since March Madness of 2021 and is currently a contributing editor and Big East beat reporter and recently joined the Hoops Capital of the World Substack as a contributing writer. Let's bring him in. T, a dominant win over Villanova led by an almost triple-double by Paige Bueckers. Is the victory over Villanova a sign of things to come for this UConn squad?
Well, hey, Mark, good to be here today, and I sure hope so. I mean, they looked real good. I was having, honestly, some flashbacks to the dominant teams of UConn's past where they just kind of defeated every team by 30 points. It just kind of was so impressive to see the way that Paige and Sarah were so consistent. AZ didn't have her best shooting game, but Caitlin Chen stepped up in her sort of place.
Yeah.
And so it was just a complete performance. And I think the best UConn teams have always dominated on the defensive end, and they were just shutting them down on the defensive end. So that was really good to see. And I hope that's the state that we can remain in, right? I think that the challenge has always been injuries. So we have 12 healthy players now. We'll see if that can last.
Yeah, no, I think it was funny on one of the shows I said like a couple days ago that Caitlin Chen stepping up, her career high at Princeton was 31 against Villanova. So it's like, I don't know if it's just something in the water when she plays Villanova. But yeah, I mean, that's what made this game special for me is because even if Caitlin has a similar game to, like a good floor game like she's had all year, 5-6 points, a couple assists, et cetera, keep everybody steady. It wouldn't feel as impressive, but the fact that you have a game where AZ kind of, I don't know, just didn't play that great, and that just happens, to have someone step up and essentially take her production is what kind of is making me ask these questions of, are we all the way back? Are we the UConn that we all know and love, or is this just another team that's going to win by 20 points? I mean, the last two games have been crazy.
Yeah, I mean, look, the potential's there. I think Gino's mentioned it. This could be a special team. So I think the pieces are there. We'll talk a little bit later about Aubrey Griffin's return, but there's just a lot to be hopeful for, as the last couple games have showed us.
Yeah, before we get into to Aubrey being back, her coming back from injury kind of creates or sets in motion a few different things, right? You're going to see a little less love probably for Allie or Morgan because eventually as she gets ramped up, you're going to see some of that cause and effect. What do you look at as far as this team? If Aubrey is, let's say we're January 24th right now, if she gets ramped up by the Tennessee game where she's playing 20, 25 minutes and they feel good, what's that rotation look like for you? Like who's anything changing in the starting lineup? Do you think Aubrey just is off the bench as the first person? Like what are your thoughts?
I think Aubrey stays off the bench. She's always kind of had that ability to be a spark after the game's first couple minutes. I think that's where she really shines. And I think that, UConn's not going to want to change up necessarily the starting lineup later in the season. I think that where she fits in nicely is sort of like could come in as KK Arnold comes in and kind of just both of them are just such quick athletic players, and I see just a lot of overwhelm from opponents when those two come in at the same time, because Aubrey, lengthens the floor, but she's also quick. Same with KK Arnold. She's just speedy, and they're overwhelming on the defensive end. So I love the idea of them being off the bench together. And I think there's a lot of potential to play around with those lineups. What Aubrey Griffin does is she adds length, and I think that's really important for UConn and also depth, and that's what they haven't had in years.
You know what I immediately thought of is, we don't have I saw a documentary the other day about Back to the Future being like one of the most perfect movies, and that's a time travel movie. We can't go back in time. We can't take the DeLorean back to the Notre Dame game. But all I could think about is if we had Aubrey Griffin's athleticism and aggressiveness, how much different that game would be, hedging out screens against Hannah Hidalgo and making her kind of do different things. And I don't think you'd have seen as many mental lapses on the defensive side if you had her, just based off of like showing. Like sometimes leadership is just, you don't have to yell at your teammates. You just show them what you're doing. And then I don't think Ice would have gone under screens. I don't think, Jana would have. I think that's what she's going to bring to the table, because I could just see her kind of getting Hannah into these like double teams where then she has to kick it and then get it out of her hands. So do you agree with that? Like, I think that's what she's going to bring to the table for sure.
Yeah, and that's what she's always brought, right? I think it can be hard to remember a time where she was healthy, because there's been so many health issues, but she has always been that spark and a difference maker in games. I think that what's really impressive about her now is that she's in her 6th season. She has all this college basketball experience under her belt, and she has just the wisdom of having seen it all. So I think it's not just what she brings physically, what she can do on the court, but also, like you said, like leadership by example. She can show the players how it's done, and her experience gives her that ability.
Yeah, I totally agree. Paige Bueckers, almost another triple-double. You wrote a really nice piece on the Hoops Capital of the World about her getting to 2,000 points, but it was a really nice introspective about, she's been through a lot, like all of the things in her life, from being on the cover of Slam as like a high school player to now, NIL deals where you're, handing out iPhones to your friends and having your own shoe. Outside of all of the spectacle of her, I mean, she still is doing it on the court, man. She almost had a triple-double, 22 points, 9 rebounds, 8 assists against Villanova. I felt like she was more assertive in this game. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. And I think Gino alluded to that, just kind of that, when she's being aggressive like that, like I think he mentioned after she scored that 2,000th point, like she could be way higher if she actually did what I said and shot the ball. that was kind of the tone of it. Like that's what he's telling her to do. Like Paige Bueckers is a dominant basketball player, and she's the type of player that you can just clear out the lane and give her an ISO and she can figure it out. Like that's the thing. She is a really gifted basketball player, and when she's sort of taking control, understanding that that's her role, she can be really special.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to dive back into Aubrey being back and what that does to the lineup specifically, and also just celebrate this team right now, because there's not a ton of roadblocks in the way until we play a Tennessee team that just lost to Texas last night. I'm sure they're going to be itching to play a UConn team in here in a couple weeks. So we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to talk about that with T. Baker. Attending an NFL playoff game has to be an experience like no other. The energy, the excitement, and the connection with other fans are unmatched. I'd be lying if I said I remember the thrill of seeing my own favorite team clinch a playoff win live, because I haven't. But I would imagine if I did, the memories would be something that I'd never forget. And this year, Game Time makes it even easier to create those unforgettable moments with their new feature, Game Time Picks. It filters out the fluff and shows you only the best deals on great seats, so you can focus on what matters, being there. I use Game Time Picks to grab tickets for an upcoming playoff game, and it couldn't have been easier. I found a super deal that gave me incredible value for amazing seats, and I could even preview the view from my spot before buying. The all-in pricing is a game changer. No surprise fees at checkout. Plus, knowing my tickets are backed by the Game Time Guaranteed gave me complete peace of mind. So here are some things that you can expect from Game Time. Super deal is the best value for every event. Seat views before you buy. Curated deals make it even easier to find the best price on great seats. one-time ticket delivery, lowest price guaranteed, and you get event cancellation protection and job loss protection. Absolute no-brainer. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, you redeem the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, we're back on Locked On UConn with T. Baker, contributor to Hoops Capital of the World and the Next. All right, my friend, Aubrey Griffin. I don't think it can be said enough, like how much this contribution. We talked about this with you and with Emily Adams at the Hartford Courant a long time ago. When we said when AZ comes back, it's kind of like adding like the way the W can add a trade midseason to kind of boost your team. This is another trade, essentially, where you don't have to give anything up. So it's like just like a free agent signing, which is wild to me, right?
Yeah.
I think what she brings is she's the last piece. If there's a puzzle that Gino's trying to put together, she's the last piece to them now being a legitimate shot. You always have a shot when you have Paige Bueckers and all this scoring, but teams are more than that. They all these little parts, like all these little things about leadership, defensive, all the minutia. She's the ultimate glue gal. Like I think she does a little bit of everything, and she's also going to elevate other people's games. Do you agree?
Absolutely. And I think it's important to also look back on her history in the program. Like, she has been with this program since before the pandemic began.
Right.
She was there in 2019. She was competing in the American Athletic Conference. She actually won.
Yeah.
She was on the all tournament team her freshman year of that tournament. And that was her last game as a freshman because they canceled the NCAA tournament. But I think there's a lot to be said about leadership, especially when you get to the end of the season, in the Final Four, in those last games, like just having a player that can do anything on the court, is willing to do anything on the court, is a team player, but also has the experience and the knowledge of how this team has evolved, the different pieces that have come and gone, and where she fits into all of that. I just think she's a really special player, and given her history, if she's able to kind of be the X factor that pushes UConn to the championship this year, I think that's just gonna be a really special story.
Yeah, I do too. I all I can think about is being at the Final Four and like having her and Paige be asked these questions, because it's not that in AZ, like, we can just keep going down the line. If Caroline comes back and makes a miraculous recovery at the end of the year, like there's so many of these little kind of like stories within the story that can be really talked about if they do end up getting to Tampa. And people also forget, maybe not UConn fans, but kind of college basketball fans as a whole, that in the 2022-23 season, she averaged 11.3 points and 6.5 rebounds. It's not like she's coming in and just being like, hey, I'm going to get like 2 points and 4 rebounds and kind of give us a spark. Like she was a legitimate offensive threat. She was a legitimate basketball, like a rebounder. So she can really do more. I'm cautiously optimistic though. And I think that's what Gino's approach is right now. It's like whatever you get from her is going to be great versus thinking that she's going to be back to where she was 2 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, and we talked about it last week a little bit. Like, you are never the same player coming off a major injury.
Right.
Even though she's had a major injury in high school, she had a back injury. She had just seemingly an endless number of injuries throughout her UConn career. But I think what is always the case is that players have to fit into their new bodies when they get back. And I think for her,
good call.
She was a WNBA prospect. Like that's the thing. She was the type of player who was really on track to becoming a professional player. And who knows if she can get to that level again, but I think it's great that she gets a chance to end her UConn career while playing.
Do you think that there's I was actually on another show with Maria Conlon of the 2004 championship team, who's now a coach, I think, at Western Connecticut State University. She was talking about, I asked her a question about lineups and essentially asking, could Aubrey be in a lineup where Sarah's at the 4 and she's at the 5? And she said 100%. She said she said she would actually love to see a lineup of KK, like this would be all speed, right? KK at the point with Paige and AZ, and then Aubrey and Sarah. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I love the quick lineup. I love the idea, like I said before, about of Aubrey checking in with KK Arnold and that just being a rotation that can run you up and down the court. I think what it really signals though is just depth. I think
Yeah.
where UConn has struggled. I mean, they made it to the Final Four last year miraculously, but they had such a small lineup. It was something like a 7-player rotation, right? And that's what wears you down at the end, right? It really is like all these teams are talented. And we'll talk later about who has the potential to be a Final Four team, but really when all the teams are there, they're all good teams, and you got to just have enough in the tank to get there. And I think having Aubrey back, having the ability to rest certain players throughout different stretches of the game, that's going to be the difference maker.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about it here in this next segment when we return, because there's no ads, so this is just a quick little turnaround for all of you that hate ads. So just put that out there. We're going to come back with T's favorites for the Final Four. Is UConn now in that mix? I think so, and we'll talk about that when we return. And just like that, we're back with T. Baker, contributor to Hoops Capital of the World, and the next Big East beat reporter. All right, man. Look, you got some really good teams out there. I think if I was saying who I think is the favorite, just by the numbers, I think my heart tells me it's South Carolina. My brain tells me it's UCLA. Who are your top 2 teams right now?
It's those two.
Is it?
Agreed. South Carolina, UCLA. I don't know the order.
Sure.
I think both of them are elite. I think that the loss of Ashton Watkins for South Carolina in that particular matchup does make a huge difference, because UCLA center Lauren Betts is just dominant. She's the reason that team is so elite this year. I think one of the challenges with UCLA is they haven't been able to cross that Final Four line in recent seasons. Corey Close is such a great head coach over at UCLA, and they're always on the brink. So I think this could be the year they break through. I think they have the pieces to do it. They just have to perform when it matters. But yeah, that's a good team right there.
Yeah, Lauren Betts is averaging 20.3 points, 10 rebounds, but she could probably be averaging more. She had 25 points, 13 rebounds. I think she had 7 blocks against Rutgers. She's a monster. And I say that with all the love in the world. She's 6'7". So if you're unfamiliar with her, get familiar, because she's going to be playing. She's going to be playing in the Final Four, barring some crazy upset. How would UConn? Let's bring it back to UConn. Let's say they play UCLA in the Final Four of the championship game. How do you guard her? Are you doubling her? What do we do?
I think you do double her. I think that it's a combo of, the center, whoever the center in the game is, Jenna Elfie or Ice Brady, along with Sarah Strong, kind of UConn's 2 biggest players that can stretch the floor. I kind of see that being a defensive combo in players that you rotate. Again, Aubrey Griffin's back, rotate her on her for certain parts of the game. I think you double, but you also switch players who are guarding her so that you can have some in the tank. I don't think you want necessarily one player to have that assignment all night when you can rotate different players. So it's a combo. I think that the thing is, UConn is such a guard strong team. So that is a potential vulnerability for them. I think that's kind of been the case over the past few years, but I think they do have the combos of players. I think even their players who aren't bigs can stretch the floor and are strong defenders. So I think there's opportunities there to just kind of mess around with that those assignments.
All right, big game tonight in SEC country when South Carolina and LSU play. LSU's undefeated. They're 20-0 against the Gamecocks. What's that game look like for you? Do you think South Carolina is going to kind of announce themselves as, hey, listen, we may have lost Ashton Watkins, but we are not going anywhere? They kind of did that against Tennessee. What are your thoughts here?
Well, is this one in South Carolina? I think it is, right?
I think it is.
Because South Carolina does not lose a lot at home. So that's kind of the piece for me. They're a really strong team.
It is in South Carolina.
Yeah. So I do predict South Carolina wins this one. I think that LSU is a great team. They also haven't been tested much this year. I think this will be a major test for them. It's possible. I know last year's game did kind of go down to the wire, but that was at LSU in Baton Rouge. So I can't wait. It was supposed to be last night, but due to the storms, it's tonight.
Yeah,
So
5 o'clock.
I'm in extra time for this one. Can't wait to see it.
Yeah, that should be that. I mean, that's the game of the night tonight. Especially on the women's slate. There's no other ranked teams unless you're super excited about. Actually, I would tell you in my neck of the woods, in the mid-major side, North Carolina A&T women are undefeated in the CAA, which is a great. They're doing fantastic, but I don't think too many people are excited about that game, especially when you have the number 5 team in the country versus the number 2 team in the country. I think UConn is there with these teams. I think Notre Dame is obviously probably number 3 on the list. Texas beat Tennessee last night, right? I'm not. My brain isn't not working this early in the morning, but so my thing is, I don't necessarily know if UConn is outside looking in of that top 4. I think they're the 4th best team in the country right now. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, this question, when you were asking me to kind of think about my favorites, I narrowed it down to 6.
Mm-hmm.
UConn's on that list, UCLA, South Carolina, and then I have Notre Dame, Texas, and USC, so Southern California. It's a toss-up. I mean, I think UConn is absolutely able to beat those teams. It's just a matter of, is that their night? How the matchups look. But I think UConn is solidly a Final Four team. I mean, look, this team's made the Final Four all but 1 year in the past 15 years. So UConn knows how to deliver when it matters. And certainly when Paige is in the lineup, they've gotten there every year. So I think that they're right there. And I would be really surprised if the Final Four didn't include 4 of those 6 that I just named.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Right now the AP has UCLA at 1, South Carolina at 2, Notre Dame at 3, USC at 4, LSU at 5. That'll probably change when the South Carolina LSU game is ended tonight. UConn at 6, Texas at 7, Maryland at 8, who just lost to Ohio State. So, I think you're right. I think TCU is kind of like a dark horse, potentially that could make a run to the Final Four. That people are. They're 19-1. They're number 9 in the country. But as far as outside of that 6 or 7 that we just mentioned, but outside of that, I mean, I think for me, when the dust settles, it'll be South Carolina, UCLA. I'm going to say UConn. I'm a homer, but I'm going to say it anyway. And either Notre Dame or USC. I think or it could be one or the other if UConn is a 2 seed and it has to be in the Notre Dame bracket or wherever they're a 1 seed against. I think one of those teams that's on the outside, whether it's a UConn or USC or Notre Dame or even South Carolina, if they get upset in like the Elite 8, that's going to be a real frustrating thing because any one of those teams, when they get to the Final Four, could easily win the championship.
Absolutely. And again, that's where UCLA has stumbled in recent years. I saw them last year in the regionals where they were defeated before the Final Four. So it'll be interesting. That's the thing. Like there's a psychological component to all of it. And there's people always say it's a game of inches. It's true, right? Like there's just always these moments at the end. The margin of error is so slim. And I think that's what always kind of felt really ludicrous about what people would say about like UConn women's basketball being bad for the sport, a couple years ago.
Right.
Because it's really hard to do it. Even if you make it look easy, it's really hard to do this. So that's what's really remarkable about UConn's run and how often they get there. They make it look easy, but it's really super not easy. Like a lot of schools hang a banner for that. So
right. And I think to your point, it's not easy to create the machine, right? Like the machine of like all of it, the recruiting, the constant having people come to campus, like all of that. Like you kind of simultaneously trying to win a championship, but also we did some stuff on recruiting yesterday, trying to get recruits for the 2026 and 2027 seasons. Like it's not that has that, but that's always been like that. It's not just, and it's being ramped up now because more teams have made more investments in their programs. So now they're kind of on more of an even playing field. But the fact that UConn has created the brand, can't get upset at the team that did the damn thing early on enough to now reap the benefits in 2024. You know what I mean? So now that women's basketball has become kind of like a cottage industry, UConn is obviously going to be always at the forefront. So I always find that really interesting. It's like, well, they've been investing in women's basketball since 1990. What did you expect to happen? Last question, and this is total curveball. We didn't talk about this pre-show because it's about you, and it's about who would you want in a road trip of UConn women's basketball players. You're driving. I always kind of throw this at some of my co-hosts because I bought a minivan earlier this year because we have 1 million children. And if you had to take my minivan on a road trip and you started in Connecticut in stores and you had to go all the way all across country to wherever, who are the 4 women that you're bringing in the car with you in UConn women's history?
That's such a good question. Diana Taurasi.
Okay.
Is number 1 for me. That would be so fun and funny.
Yep.
I think Sue Bird with her because that's also just a funny combo and they're
Sure.
best friends. So I would love to see that banter. I think I'm going to go with Maya Moore. I mean, one of the best basketball players of all time, period. And an amazing human who I've had the chance to meet before. And I have one more.
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna do a little bit of a throwback with Shea Ralph. She was
it's such a good one. She's one of my list too.
Yeah, she is like the person who got me into UConn women's basketball. I just remember seeing her knee pad, and she had like 2 teeth missing up front. So she to me just represents the grit of that program. She also coached there for years. Might come back, who knows?
Yeah.
So those would be my 4.
So my 4 is a little different than yours because I'm older, and that's okay. I have Shea Ralph. So that's a similar one. I have Nikisha Sales. I have Jen Rosati, and one of my all-time favorites is Kara Walters. That'd be my list.
That's a good list and a fun list. Both road trips would be fun.
That'd be cool. All right. Well, listen, T, I really appreciate all that you do for us, the contributions to the Substack, like everything. You're a wealth of knowledge. We really appreciate you being on the show. This has been another episode of Locked On UConn. Remember, this team is not done yet. We are like this is a like an inflection point in this season where just because they're killing everybody in the Big East, it's building. It's building. I'm so excited for that Tennessee, South Carolina kind of back-to-back matchups because I think it will really show the rest of college basketball that this team is for real. So for T. Baker, I'm Mark Zanetto, asking you to stay locked in, stay connected, and as always, go Huskies.